It's an opportunity to build a development roadmap, one that not only supports business transformation but empowers people, right? I mean, we talked about how people are the assets, and that begins with cultivating in them a growth mindset, a change mindset, a culture, right? That instills, right, that ongoing and learning is an asset. I think for each of us individually, this is the moment where we actually have to use our curiosity. This is the moment where we actually have to listen, to explore, to be curious, right? And to actually use these tools responsibly, right? Not just, just copy something into a tool, ignoring, for example, its author, right? That violates copyright.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Fearless Future, a new podcast series created by the Chief Scientist of the Republic of Cyprus, Demetris Skourides, that puts people at the center of the AI conversation. My name is Nicoletta Papakyprianou, and I'm a seasoned HR leader with international experience in change management and transformation. Throughout my career, I've worked with leaders and teams to help them adapt to changing world of work, a mission that aligns perfectly with the conversation we're about to have today. I'm honored to be moderating this session alongside two visionary leaders who are shaping the future of work, innovation, and policy in Cyprus and beyond. We are joined by Demetris Skourides, Chief Scientist of the Republic of Cyprus and Chair of the National AI Task Force. A futurist, technologist, and strategist, Mr. Skourides has been entrusted by His Excellency President Nikos Christodoulides to spearhead the acceleration of Cyprus's research and innovation ecosystem in alignment with the country's Vision 2035. Working closely with the Deputy Ministry of Research, Innovation and Digital Policy, he has played a pivotal role in positioning Cyprus's rapidly growing research and innovation ecosystem across the globe. Since January, he has led the National AI Task Force, having been entrusted to position Cyprus as a rising regional hub for AI research and innovation. Also with us is Philippos Soseilos, CEO and Chairman of PwC Cyprus, a leader whose work is helping to reframe how Cyprus pursues Cyprus's vision for 2035 and how AI in the workplace and the broader economy can create value for companies and employees. Today's conversation is grounded in three major reports released this year that are reshaping the global narrative around artificial intelligence and employment, with particular emphasis on the PwC AI Jobs Barometer, published in June, which reveals that roles most exposed to AI are actually growing faster than others, and earning wage premiums of about up to 56%. Contrary to fears of job loss, the report finds that AI is driving productivity, innovation, and new opportunities across industries. We'll also be looking into the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, which projects a net gain of 11 million jobs globally by 2030 due to AI adoption, particularly in areas like education, agriculture, and digital services. And we'll be looking at McKinsey's Super Agency in the Workplace, published in January, which highlights how AI can enhance human decision-making and creativity, not replace it, urging businesses to reimagine jobs as dynamic partnerships between people and intelligent tools. In short, these reports collectively send a powerful message. AI is not replacing opportunity. It's redefining and expanding it. However, the future is not automatic. It depends on leadership, vision, bold action. It requires a shift in mindset, all of which we'll be exploring today. So, let's begin. Demetris, let's begin with the vision behind this new podcast series, which is a first for Cyprus. Why was it important for you to launch the Fearless Future podcast now? And what do you hope it will achieve in terms of public understanding around AI?
Thank you very much. And I'd like to welcome all our guests who are actually hearing us across the world. As we are in the midst of modernizing and updating our strategy on artificial intelligence 2025 to 2030, it was important for us to address some of the myths that we see people having, the fear around artificial intelligence, right? We hear on one side, everybody wants to use, artificial intelligence. People use like ChatGPT. Then you hear professionals like doctors and lawyers saying, well, it's giving me the wrong answers, right? And there is this constant dilemma about, can artificial intelligence live up to the promise? Will it take away jobs? Will it actually have a negative impact of people? So I wanted to start, first of all, by creating the awareness around and helping these distinct types of user groups. We have students that are in high school and are looking at, a career ahead of them, and they need to understand that there is a possibility, there is a technology out there and various paths that they can actually select. Then we have the young people who graduate from school and are actually going to enter their working life. We have the professionals, and then we have basically the third, group, or the fourth group, which is basically privileged, unprivileged people, disabled people, and other, let's say, forms, maybe pensioners, who need to actually understand what does this age of artificial intelligence mean for them. So for me, it was about creating the necessary awareness and to really start creating a framework that we can help people that it's okay to, fear the unknown. It's a new journey, but we actually are equipped together, and we will actually, as government, put in the time to really create this awareness, create the education, the enablement, to provide that development, to help people move on to this journey, which we want it to be as seamless and as transitional as it can be.
Thank you. So you've consistently advocated for a human in the center approach to AI. What does that mean in practical terms, especially for government and industry?
Well, I mean, in my former life as an executive working with, I think big corporations and customers, I've lived firsthand the problem of automating everything. So most of the times in the industries, when we use technology, we go into the mode of hyper automating things to the point that we don't allow humans to actually step into the process. And with a technology that is so transformational, like artificial intelligence, it's important for us to really step back and create the new boundaries, create the new processes that will allow the humans to be in control. See, in my view, I view artificial intelligence as an enabling technology that can help every human have a form of a superpower. Either this is in being able to read the documents fast, to be able to summarize, a very complex document, to be able to write a memo, without that meaning that we relegate complete control to, let's say, language models or solutions. And by having the human in the middle, or the human in the center, and augmenting them with artificial intelligence, we can safeguard the quality. We can safeguard, that somebody is there overviewing and supervising what needs to happen. And it's important because we're at the first initial phase where we are starting to design and to use these technologies, and this requires careful consideration on the impact, etc.
So you named the series Fearless Future. When you look at today's data and AI trends, how do you reconcile the fear of disruption with the promise of progress?
Well, first of all, I'll use, I think, for my audience out there, the fact that thinking back, 2004 was when Greece won the Euro. Since then, 21 years later, we have an increase of 1,800 times of more data. That's a lot of data. We go back to 2017 and we look at where we were and where we are now, we have a 7-fold increase of data. And the most challenging item to fathom is that essentially 90% of the data that we actually have today that we're using with these technologies has actually been created post-COVID, which really brings us to the next phase is how much more information and data are humans, are our colleagues, everybody at work, forced to work with on a daily basis. And I think the balance here is way out of our scope, meaning that we have 3 to 5 times more information to deal with. And the only way that we can actually catch up and we can really be as impactful is if we can actually assess how we can use technology to help us scale, help us use our most prized asset, which is our critical thinking, our ability to really, make decisions faster based on that insight. So for me, I think the promise of progress, the promise of actually being more refined, more accurate, having the capability to predict better decisions or to really make more informed decisions outweighs I think the fear. And what I wanted to do with the series is to actually start helping people understand that artificial intelligence is here. It's not just in one industry, it's everywhere. And what we are going to be having to rethink is how do we actually identify where we can use it, across the different industries and capture that value.
Philip, I'll switch to you. So given your experience within organizations, what's your take on how organizations deal with this?
Right. So this is such a complex and interesting subject. So bringing it down to the organizational level, to the company level, if we look at it at the strategic level, what we have is a situation where everything is changing, and it's changing very rapidly. It's been a few years now that we have been discussing whether this is the new norm, whether things will go back to stability. But by now, all of the surveys demonstrate that CEOs, executives understand that they have to navigate through periods of instability, volatility, uncertainty, and predictability. So that is a given. At the same time, because of technology primarily, but not only because of that, we see tremendous shifts in industries, in boundaries of industries, and we see the creation of new value from the merging of industries or from different business models that challenge the way we used to think about the setup of organizations or the place of organizations in the value chain. So as a result of all that, AI is bringing an extra, very exciting layer of possibilities. It's becoming an issue of competitive advantage, but also of survival. There are existential threats that worry businesses that if they don't at least be up to date or be able to catch up, they may actually go out of business in a matter of a few years. So there is a real existential threat. At the same time, there's a great potential. Now, when we look at the potential, there is a hype at this point about everything that can be delivered, and we're not necessarily seeing all the advantages because we're very much at the beginning, like you said. So now I think we are at the very beginning of a new era. And in this very beginning of a new era, there are no regret moves that have to do with finding out how to stay on top of the changes, get everybody to on the awareness level, explore things. But because of the concerns of disruption, we are still in a situation of wondering what to do next. And I think we can explore all the barriers and how to really move beyond that.
Absolutely. So I'm actually staying with you. As Demetris mentioned earlier, Gen AI is here and it's here to stay. Right? Enterprises are expected to invest over $69 billion in Gen AI this year, with projections reaching $202 billion by 2028. By 2026, Gen AI and automation technologies are focused to drive $1 trillion in productivity gains. Analysts predict that by 2030, up to 30% of the working month will be reduced by AI and automation technologies. And this automation introduces challenges, as you've already mentioned, especially around the way we humans work, yes. Right? Yes. And of course, it creates fear for job displacement. So to take it a bit on the practical level, if the amount of data increases every year, as Demetris mentioned earlier, and organizational structures and headcount remain static, what challenges do employers and employees face in preparing themselves for work? And how can AI help bridge this gap?
So in many ways, this is a question that answers itself, from the sense that if indeed we have this tremendous explosion of data, there is no way for humans, in the way they've been processing data before, to be able to cope, right? Or to be able to drive the insight. So AI in many ways is an answer to the need to process and get insights out of all this data. At the same time, because of AI capabilities, there is a much bigger appetite for new data so that we can leverage AI to its full potential. So we will only see this explosion of data increase. And that in itself creates a situation where, for sure, we need to rethink the way we design jobs. And if we get into a little bit this notion of jobs, and I know we're going to discuss it in greater detail later, for sure, from an organizational point of view, because everything is in motion, because everything is changing, because new value is being created, jobs cannot stay static. So sometimes we think about jobs and we think what's going to happen to jobs, but we need to really drive the point down to tasks. Because when we talk about jobs, it is really a point of, it's what you do and why you do it. Now, the how you do it, the tasks around the jobs, clearly are some of them replaced by AI, and we can talk about that more later. But fundamentally, throughout this preparation for work, I think my key message here is that we need to allow ourselves to evolve with the technology, and we need to rethink and redesign the way we go about delivering the outcomes necessary for our jobs.
Maybe just coming to you, given that you're deeply involved in accelerating the adoption of AI, what is your view on the challenges employers and employees face, and how will AI help them in the workplace?
Thank you very much. I think looking back to what was just said by Philippos, it's very important for us to really, I think understand that today what we have is what we are seeing in the workplace is various forms of narrow AI being used. So AI being very, very good at specific things, but we have not seen yet, for example, AI being used extensively across. I think with the caveat that we're now seeing the introduction and the adoption of multi-agentic AI systems. However, I think what's very important is that companies and employers need to actually step back and see how is value created right across the organization, and particularly as they look at their business model and where they want to go next, meaning taking a company that serves 10 million users to actually be able to serve 100 million customers means that you're expecting right for a very big volume of work, or let's say interactions, to be handled. Hence, right, an employer will be looking for efficiencies. They will be looking, for example, for effectiveness. They will be looking at improving the quality of service. But all of that needs to happen right while reducing the risk of I think securing the data much better, the reduction of bias and all of that. So what's happening is the bigger question is, how do we eventually achieve that effectiveness, that efficiency, improved quality of service, while retaining, I think, the actual advantages that we need, that full accountability to be able to go back and see how were decisions made with artificial intelligence, right? How good is the quality of data that we're using? Can we build on it moving forward? So I think the most important part for us to really start understanding is that the question isn't about eliminating tasks. It's about how do we redesign, as Philippos said, the job description and the job role in a way that, some part of that administrative workload can be taken by a machine, or let's say an algorithm that can help us really create, as good quality at a bigger volume, and actually use the human, let's say, capacity, or our, I think, fellow coworkers in a way that we basically can amplify that insight. So basically being able to really go through millions of data, right, and be able to really say, this is, the advanced insight or the analytical insight we need to make decisions. So I think that what we are looking at is we're at the beginning of the journey, right? And I think we cannot just benefit by compromising quality, right, transparency, in favor of just efficiency. And what we actually are looking at is all of these job specs are new challenges, I think, for, I think the chief digital officers, the chief operational officers, the chief HR officers who are and need to look at how do we redesign a boundary where we have humans augmented with AI, let's say intelligent systems and algorithms that can actually work in as a team, right, to achieve more, but at the same time focus and allow the human to really focus on that quality. And I think that will really create, I think, a much more favorable environment for people to, I think, feel happier at work, to have a better work-life balance. And, when we've seen before that the data increased by, I think, 1,000 times, right? And we're seeing this grow continuously. So finding ways that we could really offset that, I think overhead is going to create an advantage.
Thanks. Philippos, PwC outlines 5 business implications for leaders. Which of these do you believe are most critical for Cypriot companies to consider when planning their AI strategy?
Right. So the actual barometer it's useful to say that draws from close to 1 billion of ads and data and thousands of financial statement information brings interesting insights about the trends underpinning our conversation, and gets to a realization that as leaders, there are 5 areas indeed that we need to address when we think about AI. And one of it is to consider, like the chief scientist was talking about before, the wide transformational capability of AI. So we need to look at AI for its wider transformational potential. We are not there yet. We're still trying to find use cases within our organizations, but I think in the years ahead, that transformative potential is really where the real value will come from. Another area that is clearly very, very important, and I think that's the early area that everybody's focusing on, is how do you get more productivity, more efficiency out of your systems. But again, if you only go for cost savings, you're having a limited understanding of how you can utilize AI. So one of the key messages is that we need to look at AI more as a growth strategy. We need to see it as a creator of new value. Growth through innovation, growth through the development of new sources of revenue by tapping into new services, markets, new ways of interacting with customers. And if an organization applies that growth strategy mindset, then you can really begin to think differently, both about your organization, but also fundamentally about the value that you can create through AI. The other areas that as businesses we need to focus on is clearly how do we prepare organizations at the skill level. It's a huge subject, it's an important subject, so just touching it at the very surface at this point, a lot of the research is demonstrating that because shifts are changing anyway, I mean, in every job, whether we had AI or not, the skills are evolving over time, and anybody to be good at their job and succeed in their job, you need to be picking up new skills along the way. Now, with AI, those skills are actually changing much more rapidly. So that notion of upskilling, reskilling, perhaps supporting some of your people to change roles so that they fit into the prospect. All that rethinking within your organization takes a totally different strategic perspective from a skills preparation point of view. And there is a notion around the agentic AI. So all of us by now have become very comfortable with generative AI. We're using it more and more in our personal life, but also in business to generate content. But now with the new notion of having agents, again, it changes the very strategic way that you look at your workforce. We need to decide fundamentally at the end of the day which jobs should be done by humans and which jobs should be automated or which jobs should be done by digital colleagues, the AI agents. But that's at the high level, and we can dive in some of these points later on.
Actually, I will still stick with the skill discussion that you've mentioned earlier. Again, going back to the report, it shows that a 66% acceleration in reskilling is needed in the new era of AI. And that's up from 25% just last year, right? That's so big jump forward. What does this mean in practical terms for companies trying to keep pace with this level and speed of transformation?
So one of the notions, again, out of the survey is that AI is making employees more valuable. So the fear of losing a job, it kind of reverses the notion that actually AI is not a threat. It makes you more valuable. But what does more valuable really mean? More valuable means to be relevant, to be able to produce value in today's conditions and with the emerging expectations of customers as so we all experience new possibilities. So the best marketability for anyone is to always be at the top of their game and always be relevant in creating value. If you create value, then you can increase your wages as well because the organization makes value out of the value you create, and you can call your salary pretty much, right? And that is really the combination that keeps you also fulfilled. Now, another issue, notion from a threat to individuals from an AI comes from, if they're going to replace some of the things I'm doing through AI. And clearly we are talking about an environment where the tasks that are more clearly ready to be replaced by AI are the very tasks that people don't really like doing. They are the more mundane tasks, you waste a lot of time to get to something that you think maybe it's your job, but then when you realize that AI can actually do that in seconds, you wonder, why am I still doing it? So questioning why I'm doing stuff that a computer, an AI agent can do quicker should bring us in a notion of, so where is my space? Now, the space of humans in a situation where you have AI agents working for you and being a team leader of AI working for you means that you get a lot of insights, a lot of data, a lot of analysis from AI agents, and then the job that you have is to interpret it, is to give instructions or govern or bring some frameworks on the AI output, is to bring that human touch in terms of judgment, is to bring the human creativity, to bring the collaboration with the machines, but also with other humans, to bring leadership in yourself. So the skills that we're talking about start with clearly a tech fluency, start with a digital ability to understand, to be familiar with the tools, to develop an intuition of where things are going and preparing yourself to be there. And it also brings skills around being resilient, being adaptive, being excited to learn new things, having the right mindset to be excited to learn. So that ability to learn new things fast, the ability to apply that learning practically, and fundamentally keep evolving yourself with technology is the space of the skills that we're talking about. And it's exciting because you stay relevant and marketable, and your salaries go up, and the future can feel really non-threatening at all, but very exciting.
Philippos, just to build on that, I think, what does it mean for those companies that are trying to keep track of this technology change? I mean, from your experience as an executive, right, working with all of your customers, right? I mean, how do you see this pace of change for the customer, right, in terms of really catching up? We've talked about the angle of the employee and how it's affecting them and the why, right? Themselves. But how do organizations like yours help those customers get ready for that change?
Okay, as advisors to the organizations. Now, clearly, a lot of data that is coming out now is demonstrating that despite the hype and despite the investment that is placed in AI tools and technology tools, people don't necessarily see a lot of the technology dividends or the AI dividends. And that creates sometimes some double guessing. I think the more organizations look at that, the more they realize that there are real constraints in being able to really make the most of the AI. So organizations fundamentally are realizing, and we're trying to support them in that, realizing that it is a much bigger change management effort for their own organizations. It's part of that reinvention at the organization level that needs to take place. And once you sit back and think about it in terms of what's stopping me as an organization, now there are 4 buckets of areas that change needs to happen at the same time. So there's data, there's processes, there's the people angle, and the organizational stuff. Now on the data, organizations need to work a lot on data. The quality of data, the availability of data is something that is critically important for the adoption that is necessary. And right now, and you know this better than most of us, even within organizations, we have isolated data pools. We have different systems that maintain their own data. They don't communicate between them. And clearly there's a lot of work in synthesizing data and having the data available. Processes are designed on sort of legacy. Workflows that can be created through AI are totally different. So there is a lot of process thinking needs to take place for AI to be fully leveraged. People touches upon skills, touches upon mindsets, and then at the organizational level, there's a lot to be said about culture. Create that culture and that leadership ethos and that leadership thinking and that strategic context that we need to be applying. So a lot of work needs to be done within organizations for organizations to be able to adopt. It's almost like a hindrance. If you're a big organization, it seems that you are not moving as fast as you should, and that's where startups usually have an advantage. And so business leaders should not only understand technology and think about it from what can I do, is understanding the organization and thinking about how do I maximize adoption and a culture of moving fast.
So if I understand you correctly, this is actually one of the business imperatives basically in the barometer, which basically says don't just go for a specific use case that is locked into a department or into one area, but think about how value can be created across the organization from an enterprise-wide perspective. But essentially what you're saying is that even as you do that, because this technology is too new, moving too fast, having too many different, I think, points that are influencing these discussions, somebody must actually look at the higher level coming from the vision, the strategy, the organization, the culture, and then seeing how technology and the organization create that inflection point to adopt it, correct?
Absolutely correct. If I may add to the way you're describing it, I like the expression that says that right now, with all the wonders of the technology we have, it's at its worst state that it's ever going to be. It will only get better, right? So you said it earlier. We have to understand that we're at the very beginning of a revolution. We're at the very beginning of something that's going to be fundamentally changing our lives. A lot of people compare what we are having in front of us with the introduction of internet 40 years ago, or with the introduction of electricity, or the many examples. So if we accept that, then at some level, it's understandable why people are just piloting things as use cases and not really going for the full horizontal transformation. But at the same time, the end or the medium-term effort should be very much what you're describing. So we shouldn't really put ourselves down why we're not doing it faster. There are some no-regret moves that even if you question if you're ready for it, that we should be doing, which is investment in skills and investment in data within organizations.
Thank you very much.
And specifically, you're looking at investment in skills relating to the AI tools, the AI technologies. Get comfortable with it, get familiar with it. This would also remove the fear that you've mentioned earlier. The more you understand something,
yes,
the more likely you are to keep trying and experimenting and growing with it.
Absolutely. Fear gets you defensive, closes the mind,
Exactly.
gets you not to act. I think the notion that what we're talking about is going to make you more empowered. You will enjoy your job more. You're going to become more relevant, and that you have human skills that you can develop that are necessary. It's an evolution.
And it cannot be replicated,
Yes.
At least at this stage.
Yes.
Absolutely. So just moving on but actually staying with the jobs question. So you've mentioned earlier jobs are going to be redefined, certain tasks are going to be done differently, etc. And the barometer actually puts a number to it, right? Approximately 90 million jobs may be lost, but it's expected that about 150 million are to be created. How confident are we that, well, first of all, these new jobs are going to be created and they're going to be created at pace as jobs are disappearing, new crops coming in, but also how comfortable we are that AI will make workers more valuable, give them the skills and the abilities to grow and succeed in the future.
Yes, I think this is the big debate in society right now and at policy level. And I think that creates some concerns and fears throughout. At the society level, it is really a question of, does the pace of job creation can outpace the job displacement? So we do understand that some jobs in its totality may not be necessary, but very few. A lot of the tasks in most of the jobs will keep evolving. So we are talking about augmentation of jobs. We're talking about people being augmented by technology, people being augmented by AI agents, and moving up the value chain in terms of how they deploy themselves and their skills into those jobs. But the data, the research so far shows that, like you mentioned, jobs are still going up, are still increasing. And indeed, the job creation is enough to outpace the job displacement. The point I think here is that sometimes people wonder, but that's not my experience. I see organizations that are laying off people, or I see decisions that are leading to feelings that people are not going to be, as relevant in the future. And I think we're seeing an adjustment that is taking place at this point in time. Clearly, you might need less people for certain jobs that you needed before, but that doesn't mean that you don't keep recruiting and keep creating new jobs, but at a slower pace. This is what we're seeing. So people are recruiting less in anticipation that they will use also technology and an AI more in a blended way, and they're still really not knowing how they're going to use it fully. So it is a little bit of sort of wait and see. But I think increasingly, as we navigate through this, we do get the confidence that humans remain critical, remain necessary. The technology right now cannot be trusted fully, so you do need the people to be checking everything. But for sure, that notion of get the AI to do most of the stuff that you were doing in the more menial way, and then really apply yourself to create new value, creates more revenue for the organizations. And there is a statistic that in some jobs that are very, very AI exposed, employees are actually at 3 times the revenues they used to do. But that creates new value for the organization and gives back new value to employees. So the whole notion of jobs really is a matter of a reshaping of what kind of jobs are being created. And let's understand that also this is not something which is new. I was reading a statistic that 2/3 of the jobs today, they did not exist after the Second World War. Now, 2/3. So what's happening now is that this thing is changing faster. So it's not going to be another 40 years between 2/3. It can be maybe in 10 years, 2/3 of the jobs are going to be different. So the fact that jobs are changing in nature doesn't mean you don't need the jobs and you don't need the people occupying those jobs.
So we are in transition period.
Yes, absolutely.
And the very least that we can all do is actually make sure that we have the AI understanding and skills, etc., that will be needed for the future, that will position us well for whatever is coming in the future.
We're creating the jobs of the future, if you like, and also maybe a final point: we should be rethinking, and we are rethinking task distribution between people and AI. So in all the tasks, you ask the question: who should be doing this? If AI can do it, a human shouldn't be doing it. So then you ask the question: so what should the human be doing? And you design what the humans do.
Yeah, and I think there's one more action parameter that comes into play, right? I think we've seen that AI has actually been adopted, or Gen AI tools have been adopted more by, I think, corporations and I think large enterprises. And, I think the SMEs are playing catch up. So I think that what we're seeing happening is that this experimentation is happening predominantly at the upper layers. And then, I think we have the SMEs who still need to I think, understand, experiment, and evaluate. But that's, again, why personally I think bringing in roles like the chief AI officer, the chief digital officer, right, and giving them a mandate to start thinking as to how do we create new value for this organization? How do we create that value, and how do we capture it? And that basically drives a much, I think, larger scope of a discussion, building on what I think Philippos said. Since the Second World War, I think it was actually 70% of the jobs right didn't exist. But what also we can actually see is that in just the last 20 years, we've also seen, 54% of the Forbes 500 companies are actually not existing today. So what we're seeing is that we're at a stage where this, continuous, let's say, transformation of technology is really creating a pace at which companies really need to move forward. So I think what we're seeing also is that, I think the learning from the larger corporations is build these agile teams that are dedicated to really see how to bring this. I mean, a very good best practice that I'll share with our audience is 2 years ago, when I actually started, as chairman of the Research Innovation Foundation, we chose to take our team to an offsite where we actually focused on AI and Gen AI. And we left that workshop with a commitment of, 7 teams trying to identify what use cases would actually be implemented as suggestions to help us improve our operations. Then we chose 2 of these that we implemented, and we eventually took it a step further. We created what we call the SWAT team, the AI SWAT team, where people really started, using AI for ABC main tasks. And that created, this change in mindset, the change in culture, the change in, we can do this, right? And we're going to be much more efficient. So.
Well, interesting. As humans, we've done that before many times. Internet is a very good example. And I remember not many years ago, sort of moderating discussions and debates around, is the internet an opportunity or a threat within the corporate world? Very much the same discussion we are having now. So interestingly, things move in cycles and circles. So ready to move to the next segment?
Yep.
Let me just over to you.
Yes. So, so the question I have for you, Nicoletta, is we've seen a striking number, right, that comes in the PwC AI jobs parameter. Actually. So Nicoletta, McKinsey describes, the super agency as a human-machine partnership where AI systems not only execute tasks but also think and make autonomous decisions, right? Can you elaborate on the benefits in this new phase as we refer to agentic AI?
Yeah, I think Philippos mentioned the agents a bit earlier as well. And here I would just pick out the word that you used, Demetris, partnership. I think that's a key word in this whole discussion. Up to now, we have been using AI, Gen AI, as a tool, right? Something that would help us with specific tasks during our working day. I think now we are moving to a level where we are actually we'll be seeing AI more as a virtual colleague. From the corporation, from the organization point of view, this is expanding and extending your workforce, right? You have additional resource that is going to be handling certain tasks, and this should improve efficiency, should improve productivity. From the employee, the individual point of view, this means that you're going to have a virtual assistant, a virtual colleague, who is going to handle a task from start to finish with minimal human intervention, human supervision. You definitely will have to have, checks and boundaries in place, rules and frameworks within which AI, the algorithm, the machine will be processing the task, making some decisions and so on. So it will not be completely out of control, but it will be something that as a human, you will not need to get involved in. This should free up time for the human to move into more interesting, more complex, more value-add work. Move away from the transactional part of the job and take on tasks that would actually add value and will play to your humanity, right? Things that would involve creativity, emotional intelligence, judgment, innovation. It will make the job much more interesting. It will make the job much more fulfilling. It will add to your value as you're creating additional value. It will help with work-life balance, right? And it will help with your own, coming back to the upskilling, reskilling we were discussing earlier, to your own growth and development. Talking to employees over years in HR, the one complaint that I was always getting, why aren't you investing more in your own personal growth, is, well, I don't have the time. I have all of these tasks that need to be done. I don't have time to look at myself. Well, this will give you the gift of time to actually look at yourself, improve your skills, improve your knowledge, develop and keep developing for the future.
Actually, that's a very good point, which brings me to the next question. So I think Philippos, this is one of the latest developments in the AI evolution. Agentic AI, right? What's your view on how agentic AI can enhance productivity and contribute to growth?
Right. We've been using agentic AI and AI agents, and Nicoletta described it very, very well. I feel the need for our audience to sort of add, as we have come to understand agentic AI more, that what is this? We're talking about the notion that already the technology is available for agents to be acting autonomously, to be having specific goals or objectives, and having an autonomy in terms of where they draw data, understanding context, reasoning, and then applying themselves. So in many ways, they end up being your peers, they end up being colleagues, or they end up being team members. So people who up to now, they have not really been having a team to work for them, because they are doing, for the information analyst was doing the analytics. Now they can have a team of AI agents doing the job that, or most of the job that they were doing up to now, and they are leading a team of agents, and then they get the output from that team of agents, and they apply that extra level of intelligence and insight, and in fact move more in the direction of developing business, having more contact with people that need that information. So it changes the understanding of how that works. So with that understanding that we can create agents, from a PwC's perspective and the things that I've been exposed with, PwC has even now been preparing and launching what we call the agent operating system. And that is the notion that you create an enterprise AI command center. You pretty much create the platform upon which you build, but fundamentally you connect agents. So we're talking about creating agents, but then there's an emerging new notion now about the fact that these agents need to start communicating between them and share information and work together. So we're getting into a situation that, in terms of leadership as well, we are beginning to understand that we have humans, and then you have digital agents, and you also have robots, robotics. There will be in the physical space, not only humans, but in the physical space, you're going to have machines, and in the digital space, you have agents, and all these things are evolving tremendously. The ability of robotics is increasing, the ability of digital workers is increasing. So that need with agents to be becoming part of workflows or design new workflows and find a way to work together in collaboration with humans is really the space of agentic AI. It's not only the technology side, it's also the way that they become part of the workforce and you design that new workforce. So for humans in that environment, that again takes us back to skills, because you need to be able to understand, design, and operate in an environment where your interaction is not only with other humans, but also with digital colleagues.
Yeah, well, it changes the content and context of jobs for humans, right? And again, that's a new area for upskilling. So it's not only in terms of the AI skills and abilities, but also the new skills and new abilities you will need as your job progresses and evolves to get into new tasks that are going to be replacing what AI will be taking over.
So building, I think, on what you just said, I think it's very important because I think in this new age where we're seeing agentic AI come to our organizations, the important part is that no one is actually left alone, right? Even a single contributor or an individual contributor, if the design of the organizational design actually caters, for those resources, could actually have that complementary value of, being part of a job, right? That it has this assistance coming in from agentic systems. But what I wanted to actually highlight here, right, I think, and worth sharing with our audience is what we've seen at the national level, right, with the National AI Task Force members, is that we need to take into consideration that we need ongoing learning. We need lifelong learning, right? Because we basically are at the beginning of this journey. And as we're stepping on the journey, right, their technology is changing very fast. And at the same time, we've also seen that about 40 to 60% of the skills we have today, right, are going to be changing in the next 18 to 28 months, which forces us to move forward. Now, I'd like to actually share, I think, that here in Cyprus, the Ministry of Digital Policy, Research and Innovation is the actual, let's say, overgoverning body that overviews basically digital skills. And the most important part for us here is that we've already seen, right, work being done to prepare ourselves, right, prepare basically the employees for that skill set. We've seen, for example, with the Human Resource Development Authority, what we've done is they've developed, the first type of skills and courses that will really prepare humans for, how do you work, for example, if you're an accountant with AGI, how do you actually leverage artificial intelligence or generative intelligence if you're a lawyer, right? Or how does, for example, a tutor or let's say a teacher get ready to offer that tutoring service to their own students. So we're at the phase where we've actually rolled out the first 15, let's say, workshops in Cyprus. They're available through HRDA. And what we're doing now at the national level, we've recognized that essentially AI is a tool, right? It's a tool that democratizes how information and knowledge is actually used, right? And it actually will be served as an experience. And it's important for us to really help users, help employees, help, I think citizens, help, I think pensioners also understand that how do you communicate with this language? And I think that generates, I think, a lot of value. But we're still at the beginning, and we're doing a lot of work with the National AI Task Force to identify the building blocks that will get us to the point where we could maximize not just how we create the value by using the technology, but how we actually capture it to create that environment where no worker feels burned out. No worker has to actually suffer that, pressure of not being able to deliver work. No worker gets to a point where they're simply demotivated because they don't care anymore. And all of these problems that I think, Nicoletta, and your experience, we've actually encountered in the working place. Thank you.
Absolutely. Switching gears somewhat, Demetris. So going back to the PwC report, shows that companies embracing AI are seeing gains in both productivity and employee value. Yet, despite billions invested since 2022, many organizations still struggle to realize these benefits. From your perspective, what sets successful companies apart, and what opportunities open up for those who get it right?
That's a very challenging question, but I'll think to unpack it, I'll say that what we've noticed is that many people think that adopting artificial intelligence, or I think AGI, I'll just use AGI here and to simplify, what we're doing is we're seeing that many have this fallacy or this, I think, blind spot thinking that it's just a use case. You just implement it in, right, and magic happens. It doesn't work that way. What we've seen out of the big organizations that are actually benefiting from the technology is that they understand that it all starts with the data, They understand that, you need specialized teams that are going to be able to, clean the data, that are going to be able to really do that analysis. I mean, and that's, I think the data scientist eventually getting up to really thinking about, what type of models, where do you want to go, what's the benefit you want to create, what's the added value that you need to capture, and what's the business model that you want to pursue. And that's where you start thinking about AI engineers. And then on top, right, you eventually get to implement the use cases. But all this won't work if you don't have a governance and an oversight mechanism in, right? So basically, is the data coming in, right, correct, or is it actually having hallucinations? Is the data biased, right? Are we running a risk of exposing data and company secrets that we haven't noticed exists? Remember, we've used all of these technologies before. I mean, back 3-5 years, like we have most of our cybersecurity solutions already have a lot of AI in them, right? So they were then to help us, right, defend ourselves much easier. So we're at a stage where all of this isn't just a black box. It's many, many different components adding to the layer of complexity that we discussed earlier on, coming from the strategy, the vision, the organization, moving downwards. So for those who get this right, they're able to scale their businesses much faster. Imagine having the possibility to tailor your answer or a campaign to every different citizen out there. You're able to hyper-personalize, right, any type of business that you want to offer. And that's where we're seeing, right, some of these successful companies going for. We see that they basically have defined type of services that they're going, and they're focusing on creating that next generation customer experience, which gives, the customer that feeling that you have everything seamlessly there, right? And then, right, at the same time, they're also using artificial intelligence and various, tools like AGI tools to be able to, I think, improve the productivity at the same time reducing costs. And I think this goes back to one of the 5, let's say, implications and the directions of travels of the barometer, where basically we go to not just create that efficiency and just automate a role, right, to lower the cost, but think about that value. And I think when you start designing this way, thinking about the data, the quality, the data scientist, looking at the data and making sure that this is a continuous process, right, you eventually get to the point where you can scale faster to millions of users. You can actually make decisions much faster, right? You have razor sharp capability of really making those decisions and leveraging that insight. You have customers that are thrilled, that are happy, that, they just keep on buying stuff. Like, I mean, who doesn't buy, stuff from Amazon or other platforms like that? It's because the experience is seamless, right? And ultimately, I mean, it creates a completely different operational structure in the company. So I think those are the opportunities. And if we, and the companies out there start seeing and crystallizing it in this simple format, customer experience, operational, let's say, improvement through productivity, right, it actually changes the game.
So looking at it holistically rather than just approach it specific efficiency in one specific area, just look at the whole picture.
You stole the word and the phrase from my mind. Thank you very much.
Philippo, coming back to you about people, and we've talked about jobs changing, we've talked about jobs being lost. So it is a very tangible concern amongst people, job losses, right? So AI will cost them their jobs. What role do you believe organizations, employers should play in dealing with this concern to begin with and supporting their staff, working on reskilling their staff to help them through this shift?
Again, this is a very real issue affecting all of us. I really like the expression that is being used, that you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody who is using AI better than you, right? So it's not AI which is the threat. In a way, it's your own unwillingness to really stay relevant.
Yeah.
Back to the point of relevancy, right? So I think there's a lot that organizations need to be doing, but at the same time, there is nothing organizations can do if the individual doesn't want to change. Okay, but there is a responsibility for organizations to support people on reskilling and upskilling and support with a responsible way this transition. If we stay a little bit on the mindset first, we need to for sure get into our heads that life is not static. I mean, in nothing life is static. So why should jobs be static? Why should tasks be static? Why should your job security be placed on it never changing, or in somebody protecting it to never change? That cannot make sense, right? So the notion of human evolution, the notion of lifelong learning, the notion of being excited to grow and evolve with the changes is part of being able to be reskilled. You need to want to be reskilled. So if we look at it from an organization's point of view, like I mentioned earlier, you have a competitive landscape in which you need to operate. There are new sources of value being created. You need to move fast. You need to move first. You need to really consider how to delight your customers, how to become more efficient. So the what you need to do in terms of the competitive landscape defines then the question of how do you best do it. In the question how do you best do it, you have to use technology as much as possible. We've been using automation in the past. You mentioned it, and automation was a complete replacement of things. But now, automation is more at the level of tasks. You automate tasks, for example, through AI agents that we talked about earlier. But a human then can continue take the input from the very agents that do all those automated tasks, and that will be the start of their role. So from that point of view, the skills that need to be developed is a skill of my job. Again, it's an identity almost question. My job is not to do those tasks. My job is to give that outcome or to provide more value, as now I can shift my attention to more exciting stuff that you talked about and see how I can connect better with customers, develop better stuff. So the skills, again, is not static. The new skills we're talking about will keep evolving as well. So it's a process. That's why it goes back to mindset. You ride that wave of continuous evolution with excitement, with curiosity, and that the organizations, to your question, need to consider how to provide conditions of upskilling your people to be relevant. It's impossible to replace all your people anyway, even if you wanted to. I mean, there is not enough people out there that you can bring in change. So you need to build with what you have, because there's so much expertise in the organization, and you need that expertise to be used, but in the new era. So there is place for humans in what they do, but there has to be a willingness to move up the value chain.
I would build on that. Just I think adding to my 2 cents of thinking that essentially we need to create the boundaries, right, that are going to make this happen. And I think it's important for employees to understand that no one is there to take the job, but people are there to help you, right? Claim that advantage. I think when in the PwC report we saw that employees who are embracing AI, right, are becoming much more impactful. They have an opportunity to actually, I think, claim a higher income, right? And that's the opportunity. So exactly. I think that conversations need to happen, and I think amongst those conversations, I think it's up to the leadership of companies to actually also start saying that, just like we said at one point of time, we want to be digital first, we want to become cloud first, right? Maybe what we want to say is we want to be bullish and we want to, go and become AI first as a company, right? And maybe what that means essentially is that we are making the first step, right, to set, I think those necessary boundaries or tools or the infrastructures that will allow employees to not be afraid of failing, right? I mean, I used, this tool and the data leaked, or I used, this, and I mean, somebody called me out for using, ChatGPT for creating a memo. And I think these directions of travels, right, into creating that safe culture where people can experiment, people can try, people can say, you know what? I'm actually happy today because I used the technology and it saved me 35 minutes, right? And that basically I did XYZ better. So I think those are I think discussions that we need to have with organizations or with employees to say we're building a new, I think a better version, right, of the organization. And as part of that, right, you're at the center, so we're human centric, and that's our commitment. And in doing so, right, we're going to commit to actually providing you this life learning journey where you can actually invest 5, 7 days a year, right, to be able to really do that as long as, we're getting there.
So can I actually, you reminded me of something, Dimitri, if I can. So I was listening to one person that's specializing in AI that was saying there is this hidden extra productivity gain that the organizations don't see, because at this stage there's a number of individuals that are using the productivity tools, the AI tools, ChatGPT or whatever, to do the job what they're doing, but they're not telling anybody that they're doing it, so that they're doing it faster, and that productivity gain they're using it for work-life balance, or they are afraid, to your point, to admit to it, because then somebody will turn around and say, so what do I need you if this can be done by ChatGPT anyway? So this experimentation needs to be done, as you said, in a very safe environment, because what we really want as we progress is for that awareness of people and familiarity with the tools. But then at the organizational level, companies need to embed AI into their processes and into the changing tasks. And by doing that, we move away from this situation that people continue to do what they used to do. They just do it faster, or they do part of it but they're not really moving up that value chain because they think their job remains static.
You're doing the same job with new tools.
With new tools, faster, right?
And spending less time,
yes.
Potentially. Yeah, but that's not the idea. The idea is to free that free time to be used more productively in different ways. But then that's where the organizations need to step in and be part of that conversation that you're saying, and make it okay and make it right for people to really do the exciting stuff, because then they create more value to themselves, and they can command higher salaries.
That's a big mentality shift, right?
Absolutely.
At the organizational level and at the individual level. And that's the things that kind of a decisive factor, the mindset of how you approach AI and how you open up to it.
And it's actually an opportunity, right? Because besides the mind shift change, you also need to factor in a cultural change in the way that I think organizations actually, contribute to that value. So we've seen many times, I think, Nicoletta, you've come, I think, from an HR leadership background. And, many times we've seen that HR is a support function, where in this specific case with AI, right, the amount of work that needs to happen on the talent development of the organization, right, is very big, right, is massive. And that's where I think there's also an opportunities for roles to actually get more hands-on and really focus on how do we create that. Bringing us back to, I think, the discussion, what I wanted to ask you, Nicoletta, is, as an HR leader, a seasoned HR leader, do you think that the opportunity is only creating value for the company, or do you think that it's wider, the benefits are wider?
Absolutely, it's much wider. Right? I mean, we've touched on all the benefits to individuals, right? So doing more interesting, more exciting work. A lot of our work is work that needs to be done. Right? We all know we're going to work, so there are things that we have to do because we have to do them, and then there is the interesting part of the job. If the job that needs to be done can be done by an agent, great, that part goes out, and then you focus on the really value add, more exciting, more interesting work. So you come out feeling much more satisfied with your contribution and the job you are doing. Your own evolution, your own development. There are so many things happening, so many things that you can get your head around, learn new skills, get new abilities, right? You have the opportunity and the time. Well, first of all, AI can help you with that. But you also have the time to do that, work-life balance. Your own income potential, we've talked about that, so that can increase. So there are so many advantages to the individual. It all comes back to the individual wanting to go after that. No matter how much the employer throws at the individual, unless you open up to it, you accept the things are changing, you embrace this change, you don't fear it, you don't run away from it, you run towards it and actually get the skills of the future, understand what it is you need to do, and actually go out and do it. Commit yourself to this lifelong learning, because things are going to be changing.
I didn't
fast.
hear you well there. Can you just say that louder, please?
Look, things are going to be changing. They're going to be changing fast and faster. So as individuals...
lifelong learning is also here.
Absolutely. You need to keep a step ahead, right? So you need to commit. And again, that's a mindset change. I don't just say, I came out of university, I have my degree, I've done my learning. No, learning needs to continue every day. You need to be picking up new skills, new experiences along the way, just to stay a step ahead. And that can be very, very fulfilling, very rewarding for you as an individual. So loads of opportunities for individuals if they want to go after them and if they commit to it.
Thank you.
So we've been talking about changing jobs, Demetris. So, and we've been hearing about the jobs of the future. But there is little clarity on what these jobs, what these roles actually are. Can you help us understand how today's jobs will evolve into these higher value roles that we've been talking about, and where new jobs will likely emerge?
Thank you. I think that's one of the burning questions out there that everybody is trying to understand, given that we're at the beginning of the journey. So I think that we've touched before, I think a very important topic where we're saying that a job has many tasks, right? And what we need to understand is, right, which ones of these do not add that value that, deserve that, I think the time of our colleagues, and we could actually use agents, right? Or, I think robotic process assistants, right? Or any other technology to do that. And then evolve the job, right, to where that job can really create that added value that is in line with the business strategy, and at the same time, right, in a way that we can capture that value. Because we've seen, I think, throughout the decades that we have actually been very good at creating value, but we don't really necessarily, right, we don't get into the point where we can actually capture that value. So I think that going back onto the barometer, one of the opportunities that I really liked in the report is that those industries that are challenged by AI seem to have a 3x 3x increase in terms of revenue per employee productivity, and that's massive, right? So I think that goes back to the design board, right? If I were a COO, if I were, as chief human resources officer, thinking as to how can I actually convert the time of my employee into something more productive that, touches that. So what we're seeing, I think, right, and I've been talking to hundreds of, fellow colleagues, right, who are, thinking about how artificial intelligence can add value to an organization, about, those new roles that are coming up. And what we've realized is that there's a lot that is actually creating and disrupting the way we actually do work. And it starts by understanding that the way we used to do work before is very different to how you do work right now, right? And I think the tools that you need to actually be much more efficient have changed. So I'll share a few examples of roles that I personally see, right? However, this is not an exhaustive list. I'll just mention at least 20 of them, right, for our audience to take away and reflect. So I think, first of all, we've seen prompt engineers, right? Prompt engineers are growing. It's actually, becoming an area where a lot of investment is happening. You see online courses everywhere. But I think what's happening with prompt engineering is that it's a simple way for you to be able to communicate, right, with a model and be able to get that answer back. The more refined you are, right, in doing that, the better you can actually, a better insight, better, responses you get. And I actually myself practice this 5 minutes a day, right? And the actual, let's say, improvement is massive. We've seen, for example, jobs coming up with companies hiring AI model trainers, AI ethics consultants, AI auditors, AI business strategists, right? People who really understand technology, who really understand, artificial intelligence, and, come to that inflection point to really, I think, help those CEOs and the leadership teams and the boards really drive that forward. We've seen a lot of AI basically be implemented in forms of digital twins, right? I mean, here in Cyprus, we do have centers of excellence that have actually implemented digital twins for critical infrastructures, for cities, for water management, etc. So I think that requires a fundamental different mindset. It's not just building a model, right? It's building a model that operates and provides you insight, right? Real time per second, and then you can go to the next level. I mean, using those to actually power up cognitive cities or intelligent cities. AI healthcare analysts, right? AI content strategists and analysts, financial advisors and strategists that are basically able to really, give you that level of insight and help you make those decisions. Some of the ones that I see basically that are higher value added roles include that of the chief AI officer, right? And we've seen, for example, some countries have actually taken it to the next level. They've realized that you don't just need a chief AI officer at one area of the government. You can actually go down to the ministerial level, right? Because what you need to do is to drive that acceleration of use case, of data, of operational improvement at that level. So the chief AI officer is becoming a very prominent role. What we've seen across is many people, right? I mean, I think certified accountants or people who are actually, up for a job change, they actually go closer to this chief AI officer role because of the mathematics and the STEM, I think, inside that makes them much more agile to move there. And it's a new challenge. Head of AI, AI ops leaders, knowledge engineers, AI product managers, right? How developing an AI product is very different than developing a traditional software product. We're already seeing right now in some of the most popular ID platforms that they even have code assistants. In fact, right? I mean, I was just reading I think a post of Elon Musk on LinkedIn the other day who was saying, don't invest on becoming a software developer, right? Invest in physics and math, right? Because probably what they're thinking about is up ahead of us in the journey, we'll be looking at, quantum AI or, I think neuromorphic computing. So we've seen, when we go to the legal profession or as we move from legal into legal tech, having new roles that we have AI augmented legal strategists, AI compliance and ethics consultants, smart contract engineers, right? So these are roles where we specialize people, right, to be able to deal with a larger diversity and variety of, let's say, cases using technology, because we anticipate that even regulation will change, right? We cannot, I think, stay as we are using AI, just not looking at the regulation and the changes that are there. Then I think on the data scientist side, we have data and AI translators. From an administrative perspective, I think, which are, the jobs where many people fear that there is going to be major change. We see, for example, administrators or, let's say, executive assistants and others, right, moving from that to eventually moving to become like a chief workflow orchestrator officer, right? So how do I actually orchestrate all of these, thousands of requests that are coming to really make this team of the CXO much more effective? We see, for example, the rise of the digital workplace analyst and other roles, right? As I said before, the model validator, the algorithmic fairness auditor, the synthetic data designer. And I'll stay here at the two in the end because, we've said before that 90% of the data we have today has been created in the last 2 years. We've trained most of these models with the data that we already have. So what is the new data we're going to use to train them? If we just go up and use synthetic data, the challenge we have is we're not going to be able to train these models with more real use cases, right? So there's a lot to be said there. So what I'm trying to say is that AI is a transformational enabler and an accelerator that can help us not only create that value but capture that value. And I think going back, it requires strategy, workforce planning. It requires better, right, vision setting, and we also need to be more comfortable as leaders, understanding that the days where we had 5-year plans and 10 years plans are over, and maybe what we need to start thinking is how do we plan at an annual basis, right? How do we get faster, more agile, and better? So summing this up, I'll say that I found, out of the five business implications for business leaders in the job barometer very, very powerful, and I think they're worth exploring. Specifically, I think unlocking the true potential of AI, right, requires us to shift the lens from leveraging AI at use case to enterprise-wide area, to treat AI as a growth strategy, right? Not just as an efficient strategy. I think one of the fallacies and where we're failing is that we're just going too specific into the narrow AI, and that alone doesn't help us understand the wider benefit. I think it's important for us to step back as we think about AI and see, could agentic AI be a way that we can actually create exponential workforce multiplier? For some organizations, it will be the answer. For some, it won't, right? But I think, again, that all goes back to the culture you have today and the organizational development you want to move forward. And I think, going back, it was always about people. Right? People are the most prized asset in an organization. And what we need to think is, how do we come up with those workplace development plans that enable people and set them up for success? Just giving them a generative AI tool won't really, I think, solve the problem. It's actually going to really probably make the problem worse if we're not preparing them, if we don't have the boundaries, we don't have the tools to help, that area of the value proposition rise up. Thank you.
Philippos, anything you want to add to this?
Well, there was a lot of content there.
A lot of content, yes.
Only a couple of points, just picking on the point that we need to think big and strategic, having that much bigger context so we can be truly transformational. I like the point that thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we need to, again, change the mindset about ambition and the ability to think really big. And also from an AI perspective, because we heard about so many creative job titles and roles of the future. But for sure, these are all also going to be evolving as we move forward. So again, it is the notion that AI, if harnessed properly, it becomes an enabler of human potential. It's that point that the human becomes increasingly more valuable. It does not replace your ability to think. It augments it. It doesn't replace your ability to think. It makes you a better thinker. It doesn't replace your ability to solve problems. It makes you a better problem solver. So that augmentation is really what defines the new roles and the new jobs in the new environment.
Great. Demetris, just looking at the other side of the coin, right? There are some undeniable risks with AI, right? Still, in every scenario, we also see game-changing potential. Should we focus more on regulating AI and dealing with the risks, or on leveraging it to build a better, safer, brighter future?
I think that's $1 million question, right? I think what we need to understand is that we shouldn't be compromising quality, right, for efficiency, and we shouldn't be compromising, I think, speed, right, over, for example, safety or security. So I think what we're looking at, and I am very happy you bring this question up, because in Europe, we have this, I think, a framework, we call it the EU AI Act, which is all about, setting forth a series of guidelines that help us, right, leverage this technology in ways where we actually keep our human values, right? We don't create unnecessary bias that basically puts humans at a disadvantage. And to do that, right, you need to start thinking of a series of other parameters like, the transparency of the algorithm or the quality of the data, I think the bias in the data, the explainability of a model. But most importantly, what I think is very important from the approach that the European Union has taken is that it looks into the impact on the human, right? So let me give you an example. A few years ago, there was an experiment where, a nation took, its brightest pilots, its most capable pilots, and it used all of that data to train a model. And they created a fighting engine, right, or a machine that basically was operated by by a computer. And then they took the best pilot against the machine, flew it into a competition, and they realized that in 16 scenarios and simulations, the human had actually lost. The reason was very simple, right? A human cannot take X number of G above. A machine knows exactly the exact percentage that it can fly, right, where it will actually get the human not responsive to a point, right, where he's not able to react. And that's what we are referring to, I think, the disadvantage for the human. This is why we talk about, human-centric AI adoption. We're designing jobs, right, where we want to have us as humanity, as humans, as employees, as workers, as employers, to be able to leverage and harness the technology, right, and not have the technology harness us. And I think regulation sets the boundaries where we can actually slowly, right, start that disruption, start that change within the industry in ways that we can actually progress and capture the value. I mean, there's no reason for us to go into planes that go, 4 Mach speed traveling if, right, it's not going to really help a specific cause, and it's going to create more problems on our bodies in terms of stress. And it's the same thing as if, the compute power has actually increased 1,000 times, right? And it's going to increase 1,000 times more when we get quantum AI. What does that mean? That we humans are supposed to be 1,000 times faster in the work we do? Right? So these are all questions that we need to ponder, and this is where regulation can help us, first of all, manage the risk, contain the risk, create, I think, that risk assessment framework to move forward. And I think we need both, and we also need to understand that safety, privacy, security, right, shouldn't be compromised.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, because I think it's fundamental. We've been talking a lot about the potential, and rightly so, because there's so much potential. I mean, if you have a bold ambition, you can shape a future of shared prosperity. But the bold ambition is not enough. You also need trust. You need to lead with trust and bold ambition. And that point of trust, because unless you trust this, you're not going to really go for it. You're not going to be embracing it. So that notion of trust is founded on the ability to do responsible deployment of AI. And there is a responsibility at the level of the state and policymaking and regulation, but also at the level of organization. So there has to be trust at the level of organization, trust at the public level. And we need clear governance around this, because there are rightly a lot of concerns. But once we put the right frameworks, or as we progress, we place the right frameworks, the expectation is by the public and by employees even, that organizations, if I look at that level, will do what is necessary for security, will do what is necessary to maintain trust in the journey forward, so we get to that shared prosperity for all.
Excellent. A lot of work for the future.
And for the now.
And for the now. Demetris, coming back to you, as you lead the modernization of Cyprus's national AI strategy, what is the government doing to ensure that Cyprus does not miss the AI race and the opportunities it can create?
What we've done is the Council of Ministers has actually appointed a task force that is comprised by professionals that are coming from research and academia, industry, I think from the legal perspective. And we work very closely together to really identify basically the key pillars that are going to be helping Cyprus, right, identify and zero in onto those must-win battles. That starts from the areas of research, the areas which industries, for example, are the game-changing, let's say, pillar points in our economy. I mean, Cyprus is an 86% service economy, and we're pivoting slowly to a knowledge economy. So that needs careful, let's say, processing and understanding. Identifying the top use cases and the directions of travel that can create, I think, that added value benefit for public sector to be able to transform, I think, embrace, be in a position where, we can offer that customer experience and at the same time that productivity. We're very busy thinking about, right, what elements do we need to think of, right, in the strategic part on the workforce development. And I think this lifelong learning journey journey, and I think zeroing in the different, let's say, categories or segments of citizens is important. Infrastructure is a very big discussion for us, right? We're too small, but we're not too big. We're not too small, and we're not too big, right, at the same time. But this is a technology that is very environmentally heavy in terms of consumption. And, we don't want to fall into the trap where we burden our own, let's say, economy and our environment with that. And last but not least, I would say that there's a lot of work happening at the Ministry of Digital Policy, Research and Innovation, which is in continuous, let's say, coordination with the European Union. Many of these elements that we've discussed are already there. We've built programs. AI for Government is a program where we're actually taking ministerial challenges, right, and really offering them out for, I think, startups, innovation companies to really come and help us move forward. So what we're doing is we're not just changing by trying to bring AI, we're also encouraging the more agile, the faster moving companies, right, to really come and show us how we can think differently in solving traditional problems. So I'll say that, what we're doing is we're looking at very widely as to best practices from other nations, right? And we're also looking at, things that have worked, but at the same time, we've really identified our blind spots and working very hard, I think, with the stakeholders, I think the necessary ministers and the Minister of Digital Policy, Research and Innovation, for us to be able to have what it takes to be able to take the job and make it happen.
Excellent. I think we've covered a lot of content in the past almost 90 minutes. Demetris, do you want to help us wrap this discussion up for today?
Sure. First of all, let me thank you for your time. I think before we close, I would like to leave our viewers with a few important reflections and calls to action. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that I'll encourage you to dive deeper into the insights we've touched on today. I think we have the PwC AI Jobs Barometer and the World Economic Forum Future for Jobs Report, McKinsey Super Agency in the Workplace. There's many others, but these ones, right, they're a few of the signposts that you can actually use, right, to start looking into the future. And make sure that you keep, right, looking out for these, because they're continuously coming out with I think, updated papers and new literature. For the leaders and the organizations tuning in, I think now is the time to actually develop a clear and a proactive strategy. One doesn't just react to disruption. Do not think of AI as just another tactic. Explore the opportunities it creates. It's such a transformational technology that it can really, I think, replace or eradicate your existing business model. It's a technology that, if used correctly, can take us away from something that we call today platform to an intelligence economy, which is a whole different way of thinking, right? Imagine that people right now are just using, a tool called Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini and saying, well, prepare this information for me in this report. They're not using the traditional search mechanism, right? So think of it as a completely disruptive factor. It has the potential to change, right, and repower your organization. This means essentially assessing where AI may add value, right? Where is the present risk and the opportunity in your existing business model, and what is needed to turn that into action. And I think this is where it's important for us to understand that, we all need professional help. We all need, that expert who's done it before, that can actually help us, right, rethink and challenge ourselves. But most importantly, right, I think we also need to think as to how do we create these combinations, right, of the roles where humans are augmented or are working with, some machines that can actually help us, right, become more efficient and achieve some of the benefits we talked about. It's an opportunity to build a development roadmap, one that not only supports business transformation but empowers people, right? I mean, we talked about how people are the assets, and that begins with cultivating in them a growth mindset, a change mindset, a culture, right, that instills, right, that ongoing and learning is an asset. I think for each of us individually, this is the moment where we actually have to use our curiosity. This is the moment where we actually have to listen, to explore, to be curious, right? And to actually use these tools responsibly, right? Not just, just copy something into a tool, ignoring, for example, its author, right? That violates copyright. I think the future clearly belongs to those who are willing to learn, to unlearn some of the habits that haven't, helped us be more productive and to lead forward. I think what I'd like to leave you with is that this is just the start of the Fearless Future podcast series. As the chief scientist, I'll be actually having more of these across the continent with experts in each domain. We are going to be looking across industries. We're going to be going horizontal. We're going to help, right, zero into some of the challenges. And, we are going to be taking a proactive step in really developing those AI skill developments moving forward. So I'd like to thank you all for your time and conclude by saying that stay curious. Listen, right, explore, and just walk into the door of your CXO team and say, hey, how about we redesign the future together, and we're willing up to move forward. Leaving you with that thought, I'm having a very interesting pilot that my team is actually running. We call it the digital advisor, and it's actually the bet we have is on helping each member in my office of the chief scientist be 30 to 40% more efficient. And I'll keep you tuned on that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.